Hi, I'm John Sinclair, and you're watching Oakland County, Michigan Normal News.
Hello, I'm Greg Pisecki, and you're watching the Oakland Normal News. Today's news: GW Pharma plunges as cannabis drug trial disappoints. Tuesday, April 8, 2008, by Jonathan Saul. London. Britain's GW Pharmaceuticals said its pioneering cannabis-based medicine failed to show significant improvement in final stage trial to treat neuropathic pain in multiple sclerosis patients. GW shares plunged as much as 31% to a 4-month low of 49 pence on Tuesday following the latest setback for its biggest drug hope, Sativex. Its stock was 21% lower by 9:51 GMT. GW said Sativex had a very high patient response rate in the trial, but that the results narrowly failed to reach statistical significance due to an unexpectedly large placebo response. While valid, this indicates that the effect of Sativex is marginal, and we retain our doubts as to whether the product will ever prove a commercial success, KBC Peel Hunt analyst Paul Kuden wrote in a research note. Nomura analyst Gary Wanders described the result as disappointing. GW's managing director, Justin Grover, said there was a desperate need for new pain treatments and Sativex had a real role to play. The commercial proposition is not in question, Grover told Reuters. It's a hazard of pain research that placebo effects occur in clinical trials, and Sativex has seen this with this study. GW, which grows thousands of marijuana plants in a secret location in the English countryside, said it would have to carry out another study in neuropathic pain. What this means is we are not able to speed things up, a GW spokesman added. The study was one of 3 final Phase 3 trials for Sativex taking place this year. GW said its study into spasticity in MS patients requested by the UK regulator was on track to report later this year. It also has a trial into cancer pain running in the United States, also due in 2008. Our confidence in the outcome of our ongoing spasticity and cancer pain studies is not affected by these results. Neither is our approach to gaining regulatory approval, Stephen Wright, GW's Director of Research and Development, told an analyst's call. Sativex, which is sprayed under the tongue, became the first cannabis-derived medicine to win regulatory approval when it was approved in Canada in 2005 as a treatment for neuropathic or nerve pain in MS patients. But the drug has been hit by a string of delays in Europe, where GW originally hoped to win approval in 2003. We'll be right back after this important message.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Welcome back. From the office of Barney Frank introduces legislation to remove federal penalties on personal marijuana use. Congressman Barney Frank today introduced bipartisan legislation aimed at removing federal restrictions on the individual use of marijuana, H.R. 5843. One bill would remove federal penalties for personal use of marijuana, and the other, H.R. 5842, versions of which Frank has filed in several preceding sessions of Congress, would allow the medical use of marijuana in states that have chosen to make its use for medical purposes legal with a doctor's recommendation. Representative Ron Paul, Republican from Texas, joined Frank as a co-sponsor of the federal penalties bill. The co-sponsors of the medical marijuana bill are Representative Paul, along with Reps Maurice Hinchey, Democrat from New York, Dana Rohrabacher, Republican from California, and Sam Farr, Democrat from California. Congressman Frank released the following statement explaining the legislation. I think it is poor law enforcement to keep on the books legislation that establishes as a crime something which in fact society does not seriously wish to prosecute. In my view, having federal law enforcement agents engaged in the persecution of people who are personally using marijuana is a waste of a scarce resource better used for serious crimes. In fact, this type of prosecution often meets with public disapproval. The most frequent recent examples have been federal prosecutions of individuals using marijuana for medical purposes in states that have voted, usually by public referenda, to allow such use. Because current federal law has been interpreted as superseding state law in this area, most states that have made medical use of marijuana legal have been unable to actually implement their laws. When doctors recommend the use of marijuana for their patients and states are willing to permit it, I think it's wrong for the federal government to subject either the doctors or the patients to criminal prosecution. More broadly speaking, the norm in America is for the states to decide whether a particular behavior should be made criminal. To make the smoking of marijuana, whether for medical purposes or not, one of those extremely rare instances of federal crime, literally, to make a federal case out of it, is wholly disproportionate to the activity involved. We do not have federal criminal prohibitions against drinking alcoholic beverages, and there are generally no criminal penalties for the use of tobacco at the state and federal levels for adults. There is no rational argument for treating marijuana so differently from these other substances. To those who say that government should not be encouraging the smoking of marijuana, my response is that I completely agree. But it is a great mistake to divide all human activity into two categories: those that are criminally prohibited and those that are encouraged. In a free society, there must be a very considerable zone of activity between those two poles in which people are allowed to make their own choice, as long as they are not impinging on the rights, freedom, or property of others. I believe it is important with regard to tobacco, marijuana, and alcohol, among other things, that we strictly regulate the age at which people may use these substances, and enforcement of age restrictions should be firm. But criminalizing choices that adults make because we think they are unwise ones, when the choices involved have no negative effects on the rights of others, is not appropriate in a free society. If the laws I am proposing pass, states will still be free to treat marijuana as they wish. But I do not believe that federal government should treat adults who choose to smoke marijuana as criminals. Federal law enforcement is a serious business, and we should be concentrating our efforts in this regard on measures that truly protect the public. A summary of the bill is available at the link below. And we'll be right back.
Get up, get up, get up, get up, go! Get up, go!
Got stickers. Oakland County Normal does not endorse the random stickering of other people's property, both public and private. All rights reserved.
And welcome back. Upcoming events: Detroit Liberation Day, May 3rd, Grand Circus Park, Detroit, noon to 6 p.m. I could tell you all about it, but instead, let's hear from the guy organizing it, Mr. Paul Pearson. Paul?
Hi everyone, my name is Paul Pearson from DetroitLiberation.org. Just as it sounds, on the website, www.DetroitLiberation.org. I want to thank the people from Oakland County Normal for allowing me to do this shameless plug for the event. On the first Saturday of every May around the world, over 200 cities, last year I think it was 233 cities, had an event for the legalization of marijuana, the liberation of hemp, the liberation of ganja, and the use of ibogaine for prevention of addiction, which ends up being a lot more ethical and a lot more medically sound and less addictive than methadone treatment. And We are an educational event that happens in these cities on that very same day. I run the Detroit event. I took over from a gentleman named Jay, who is the in charge of Cures Not Wars of Michigan. And I am running the event, and I'm asking for some help and trying to give you some information. Real quick, go to DetroitLiberation.org. Please download the flyers. Pass them out to as many people as you can. I really am asking for as many people's help in order to get a good turnout. On that day at Grand Circus Park, right by Comerica Park, Baseball Park, 2 blocks south of the Fox Theater in downtown Detroit, beautiful downtown Detroit, as I like to say, we're having our event. There is a band, James and the Rain Bros, myspace.com/James and the Rain Bros, B-R-O-S. Please visit their site. We'll be playing. And John Sinclair, yes, John Sinclair, the man who has a song by John Lennon written about him, and Peter Werby from WRIF's Night Call, a very wonderful, intelligent, left-wing, liberal radio show who's on the air every Sunday night on WRIF and broadcast live through streaming on WRIF.com. We'll be there to speak. It's going to be a wonderful event. Many local organizations such as Oakland Normal, Michigan Normal, Wayne County, ACLU, probably a couple of organizations are going to be there representing themselves and speaking. If you have a medical marijuana story that you want to tell, please come, please see me, and we can have you on stage. We do need a couple of volunteers for helping to clean up and for helping to spread the word. Please download our flyer, as I mentioned. And I think that's all. Greg Piasecki, back to you.
Thank you, Paul. And next, it's Legality of Marijuana Debated at Kenyon by Anton Hepler, News Staff Reporter, Friday, April 18th, 2008. Gambier, Ohio. Kenyon College hosted a debate on Thursday on the subject of legalized marijuana. Representatives of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws argued to legalize marijuana, while Mary Samuel of the Knox County Drug and Alcohol Freedom Center and Noel Alden, a criminal defense attorney, argued against. More than 100 students gathered in Gund Hall to watch the debate. Titled Doobie-Doo or Doobie-Don't, the event was sponsored by Kenyon counselor Mike Durham and the student-based Alcohol and Drug Education Program team. Durham said the purpose of the event was to bring both sides of the argument together and educate students on the issue. Cher Neufer of Normal said the issue was a basic civil liberties question. People lose their jobs just because they smoke a joint. There's no test to see if someone is under the influence at any given time. If someone smokes a joint over the weekend and tests positives for marijuana on Monday, why should they lose their job if they're not under the influence, said Neufer. Neufer argued that even non-marijuana users would benefit. It would free up the police force to pursue other crimes, said Neufer. It would also be less money on the war on drugs, period. It seems the war on drugs gets worse the more money the government spends. Noel Alden disagreed. Even the most liberal person would agree on certain provisions in any legalization law. There would be restrictions against driving under the influence, operating heavy machinery, and so on. All of that would still require police. Alden added, if they just discovered alcohol or tobacco today, those things wouldn't be legal either. Samuel said a legalized marijuana policy probably couldn't be enforced any better than current alcohol or tobacco laws. The biggest killers are tobacco and alcohol. Why would we want to add to that list? Normal spokesperson Tanya Davis talked about her own personal experiences and argued solely for the legalization of medicinal marijuana. Davis said she suffers from scoliosis and required to use a wheelchair. I have a crippling terminal disease, said Davis. I wouldn't be able to talk to you now if it weren't for marijuana. It's prescription drugs like OxyContin and Vicodin that cause addiction and raise the crime rate. Davis also asked how marijuana could be classified as a Schedule I drug when it's prescribed by doctors in 12 states. Neufer said, look at alcohol prohibition. It led to more crime. Also, the money goes underground. Look at how we used education to decrease the use of cigarettes even though they're legal. We don't put people in jail for smoking, but the rates have gone down. Legality would make marijuana more accessible, said Alden. You can't say advertising has no effect. Further, by legalizing it, the government says it's okay. There are already synthetic substitutes that people can be prescribed. By the end of the debate, both sides agreed that any marijuana policy should not allow juveniles to use marijuana. They also agreed that tobacco and alcohol are by far worse drugs than marijuana. Samuel said, "We try to educate without scare tactic. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. I think that's stupid." Davis agreed, "We have to keep the conversation going. Try not to demonize things, but talk about them and keep the dialogue going. Drug addiction is bad, but the war on drugs is worse." Hash Bash. Hash Bash 2008. Really good time. Monroe Street Fair afterwards. Even better time. If you haven't caught the video of John Sinclair speaking at the Hash Bash, or what was happening at the Monroe Street Fair, you can go to the below address, check it out yourself. Take care, and remember, stay safe. This is Greg Piasecki for Oakland Normal News.